Today we wrap up our series on classic unity prayers. And as you can see from the image, that having a prayer practice and creating the opportunity to have a daily prayer practice in your life, whether this is your situation or not, is a crucial activity. We all have the chaos that swirls around us. It may not be for children, as in this image, but we all have things that may or may not be exactly what we had intended for ourselves when we woke up that morning. And so creating a time of personal prayer and meditation is crucial. As I said earlier in the moment of appreciation, our mothers and those who nurtured us no doubt spent a lot of time in prayer. God knows my mother did. I was a holy terror. You'll get to meet her someday. I'm sure she'll tell you all about it. Yes, I was one of those. I tell her now, Mom, that was all research for my current profession. And well, I won't tell you her response. You can meet her yourselves when she visits. So in the last few weeks, I shared with you The Prayer of Faith by Hannah Moore Cohouse, a New Thought author who was a friend of Myrtle Fillmore's, co-founder of Unity. And Hannah allowed her to use the Prayer of Faith in the publication The Wee Wisdom, the magazine for children. And then last week, I shared with you the prayer and poem called I Behold the Christ in You by Frank B. Whitney, who is the idea generator and man who inspired our daily prayer booklet, The Daily Word, in 1924. And so each week as we reviewed these prayers, we talked about not only the prayer, the poem, the song that it became, but how it affected the unity movement and all of our centers that were growing around the country and around the world. We talked about Myrtle's healing as a catalyst for the unity movement, and we talked about the use of denials and affirmations. They go together, one and the other working in harmony. We also talked about the printing and the publications and how the Fillmores got the message out, because each one of these prayers and poems and songs influenced the direction and the evolution of the unity movement. And today we will talk about some of the other outer influences that are also part of the New Thought movement, of which unity is a part, and how those things affected the fabric of our society. So the prayer that we will be looking at today is known to many worldwide, and it is ultimately connected into the New Thought movement. We are joined in the New Thought movement, unity, religious science, and divine science, by the way that we articulate our similar beliefs about mind action, consciousness, and how our thoughts create our world. And so New Thought is the denomination that we all fall under. So New Thought celebrates its Recognition Day on the first Sunday in March. We celebrated that together here. We also celebrated by showing the movie, What is New Thought? It's a documentary on the foundations of New Thought as a religious and spiritual denomination. John Miller, who is the creator of this documentary, had no idea what he was getting into. He just was a writer and a musician of positive music. He learned about us because we liked his music. Religious science and unity churches found his positive lyrics insightful and uplifting, and so we in our own amazing way, pulled him into us. And I'm so grateful that we did, because that's how the idea to create the documentary was born. It was an idea that would not leave him alone. We've all had ideas like that, where it just consumes us until it is manifested on the planet. And so I am grateful to him and Spirit, because there was a plan. Although the influence of New Thought has been widespread throughout our culture, most people don't know much about it. But from the self-help books, Alcoholics Anonymous, Maya Angelou, Oprah Winfrey, and the World Faith Movement, the principles of New Thought are out in the world. We even say Joel Osteen is New Thought. He just waves the Bible while he's doing it, because he has a positive and uplifting message, and then he sneaks in some scripture, and then he waves the Bible, and he goes back to the positive application of those teachings, which is what unity is, the positive application of Jesus' teachings. It's all the same. We just do it with a smile on our face. So the movies who are out there getting the recognition in society, such as The Secret and What the Bleep and others like that, have exposed countless others to the ideas of New Thought, but not so much the denomination or the umbrella term of what New Thought is. Us. We're working to correct that. But this leads me to the Serenity Prayer. This is a key point in our exposure. Today we look at the Serenity Prayer in both its classical form and an updated version that I created when I was working with it personally. Something that is more in alignment with the unity teachings. So the original Serenity Prayer is attributed to Reinhold Niebuhr, and he was born in the house of a German evangelical pastor. And he served churches across the United States that over time evolved into the denomination of the United Church of Christ. So Reinhold and his two siblings grew up preachers' kids, steeped in religious study, and oddly enough, all of the youngsters became theologians and professors of divinity. I would have loved to have been at the kitchen table in that family, but that's me. So Reinhold wrote and spoke frequently about the intersection of religion, politics, public policy, and Christianity. He was the editor of Christianity and Crisis, a magazine, for 15 years, and he finished his career as a professor of practical theology at a seminary in New York. But his humble beginnings as a preacher's kid, then moving into becoming a preacher himself, he worked with the working class in Detroit in the 1920s. This opportunity and surroundings created in him a level of empathy for the working class people and their struggle with what they dealt with in humanity. So the Serenity Prayer was created over 6 to 8 years as part of his preaching. It didn't just get written, boom, there it was. It evolved through his sermons and lectures to his own congregation as a way of mentoring and guiding them into having a practical tool to use when they had situations that they had to face. Actually, he recounted to interviewers on several occasions that he had written the prayer as a tagline to a sermon that he called Practical Christianity. Practical Christianity, does that sound any vaguely familiar to any of you? Practical Christianity is what Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, called his entire philosophy. And here Reinhold is doing a sermon called Practical Christianity. It's a very small world. So I want to invite you into affirming the top part of the prayer of Serenity, Serenity prayer. That's in your bulletin. Y'all have your little card. So, the prayer goes, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So how and why did this become a part of the classic Unity Prayer series? This prayer was adopted and made into a cultural phenomenon by the AA Alcoholics Anonymous programs. Many Unity centers and New Thought centers worldwide have AA, Al-Anon, ACOA, all the 12-step recovery groups meeting in their congregational buildings. And AA had ties to New Thought in its founding days. So AA was founded in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, as the outcome of a meeting between Bill W., a New York stockbroker, and Dr. Bob, a Akron surgeon. When they came together to create this, of course, the historical studies were done, and there was a book written called AA Comes of Age. And in that book, Bill W. shared how the Serenity Prayer became a stable part of their teaching. It was in an obituary in a newspaper in 1942, where one of the members in the New York chapter read the obituary and brought the prayer in and said, "Look at this. This is so much of our tenets and philosophy in such a short and concise way of stating." We love short and concise way of stating anything. And so they fell in love with the Serenity Prayer. It simplified their philosophy. And so they then created a modified version, and it was distributed by AA, making this prayer a standard in many recovery programs. Now, here's where the multiple ties to New Thought are woven in. When Bill W. began writing the big book, that's what they call it, in 1938, he had also been introduced to one of the best-selling New Thought authors in New York City through the book Sermon on the Mount. This minister, Emmett Fox, who was a divine science minister, was one of the most popular authors of the day. He filled and spoke at Carnegie Hall. An amazing minister and author. I have many of his books. And it was Bill W. who went there frequently. Historians believe in the AA movement that AA has the foundational premises of New Thought based on the influence of this divine science minister to the man, Bill W. And in addition, Bill W. was also exposed to the teachings of Emma Curtis Hopkins. That name probably sounds familiar to you because Emma Curtis Hopkins is the teacher of teachers. She taught Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. She taught Nana Brooks, Unity, Divine Science, and she taught Ernest Holmes, Religious Science. This woman had an incredible impact on all generations of the development of the New Thought denomination, from start to finish in her career. And so when she passed on in 1925, her sister inherited the rights to her writings. And so to ensure that her writings and teachings and work was not lost, they created a society called the Ministry of High Watch at a farm in Kent, Connecticut. And Joy Farm was the name of the farm, and it was run by a lady called Sister Frances. And the role of this ministry at Joy Farm was to not only preserve the writings of Emma Curtis Hopkins, but it was also to provide a simple and rustic retreat center for those who needed a place to go and rest, to renew their mind and their body and their soul, a place to reflect on their spiritual growth. Those who were in need of rest and renewal. And it was Bill W. who frequented this retreat center, and as the original owners and folks who ran Joy Farm and the High Watch Ministry aged and evolved, they gave the farm to Bill W. and AA. It was the first established 12-step treatment center. And so the teachings of New Thought are woven into Alcoholics Anonymous and all that they do. All Unity and New Thought centers open their doors to these level of growth, spiritual growth processes. And there are other things that weave us together through the teachings of Emmett Fox, divine science. So the use of the Serenity prayer and the prayer of St. Francis, who was loved by Sister Francis, who ran Joy Farm, and of course the Lord's Prayer. These are staples within the teachings of AA and the Big Book. Now personally, I too was given the assignment to work with the Serenity Prayer. In 2008, my father completed suicide, and one of the 2 or 3 counselors that I worked with during the next 2 years of my healing and growth from that experience assigned me to work with the Serenity Prayer during that tragic loss. Now, I'll be first. I was not shy about saying, I don't like that prayer. And so I had to find a way to make that prayer New Thought. Because I was already well on my way towards ministerial school by the time this happened in my life personally. And I put the Serenity Prayer in the whole fundamentalist bucket and left it off to the side. But when I was encouraged to find the deeper wisdom within this prayer, I gave it a shot. So I had to then change the language to fit my already well-established New Thought philosophy and way of being in the world. Reverend Linda Martello Whitsett, who is the author of the book, How to Pray Without Talking to God, which is the booklet that we use in teaching affirmative prayer, she says that our goal is to learn and practice a prayer language that is consistent with our evolving spiritual consciousness. So I put some evolving spiritual consciousness onto this Serenity Prayer because its original frame did not give me any serenity. The language of the prayer, God grant me. Oh, no. Who am I praying to? A guy back up on the cloud? That's not my God. My God is inward, everywhere present. It's energy, it's love, it's light. And so I unitized, that's what I call it when I change up the language, I unitized this serenity prayer to maintain the wisdom and the strength of its message and put it in alignment with the teachings of unity and new thought. And so I'd like to invite you to affirm the version that I wrote that's on the bottom of your prayer card. If you would join me, please. In my oneness with the divine, I have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the ability to awaken my courage to change the things I can, and the inner wisdom to know the difference. Has a little different touch on there. By claiming where God is, by acknowledging it is up to me to put my faith and my courage to work, and to recognize that my wisdom is an innate inner wisdom at the core of my being. And so that is my unitized version of the Serenity Prayer. And so whether you hear the original version shared by someone that you know, or a rewritten version that is in alignment with your mind and heart and your personal spiritual philosophy, we each need to create for ourselves a prayer practice that is ours and ours alone, so that we, during the challenges that we face in our lifetime, have the tools that are absolutely in alignment with what we are here to do and be and share and express in our world. And so don't be shy. Any of these prayers that I have given to you, just because they're a classic unity prayer, who cares? Write your own. Turn within. Make it yours. Because then your mind, your heart is connected and solid. You are standing on sacred ground, affirming your truth and being your power in the presence of God, as the presence of God in your world. So I invite you all to get a little notebook, start rewriting every prayer you've ever learned. We'll have to share. Because what I share with you could create something that would be powerful for me and others in this room, others in this ministry, your friends, your family. We are in this together, having the same experiences. And I pray that you have empathy for others in their situation and in their struggle, as the original creator of the Serenity Prayer did. To want to create something that his congregation could share in a time of struggle. And if you've not yet created that daily prayer practice, I encourage you to do so. It doesn't take long, a couple minutes. You could still sip your coffee while you're praying. You can multitask in that way. You can pray while your little cat is sitting on your lap and is sharing the purr of the universe with you. You can just sit outside in your yard and watch the birds. Because God is everywhere present. But most importantly, in the midst of you. Namaste.